session this afternoon is on promoting equality in Australia. We'll have a group of 4 speakers who will be drawing on quite different areas of experience and expertise to help paint a picture of who is working to promote equality in Australia and how and why they're doing it. Our first speaker is Demetriou. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Football League, which administers the game of Australian football, if anyone out there didn't know. The AFL supports a $3.9 billion industry that employs nearly 12,000 people. Before joining the AFL as General Manager in 2003, Andrew was Managing Director of a company that exported goods to 70 countries. Andrew is currently Public Appeal Chairman of the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Centre, and in late 2008, Andrew was appointed by the Federal Government as Chair of the Australian Multicultural Advisory Council. So I think Andrew's going to speak to us for a while. We'll have a chance to ask a couple of questions, and then he may need to leave because of another commitment this afternoon. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to participate today. I appreciate it. I came here today as I was introduced wearing 2 hats. First as the CEO of the AFL, and second as the Chair of the Australian Multicultural Advisory Council. And there's really 3 areas that I'd like to discuss today. And the first is the importance of diversity. The second is racial and religious vilification, and how we as a football industry have dealt with this issue. And the third is how we've tried to make our game more inclusive, particularly when it comes to women. At different times this year, we've celebrated the contribution of Indigenous and multicultural communities, as well as women, to our game through specially themed rounds. It's important to do this because all 3 have made vital contributions to our game. All 3 have become integral parts of our game. And all 3 are intrinsically linked to the future growth and success of our game. Recently, I had to address the National Press Club, and I posed the question during that talk: how does the AFL make our game relevant to a 10-year-old Muslim girl? It's an important question, and one I suspect we will continue to wrestle with as we reach out to new communities and grow our game. And it was something that was also touched on by Walid Ali when he addressed our industry conference 2 years ago. He made a very astute observation about our game, but it could apply to any sport or endeavour in the community. He talked about identity and how for any group in the community to feel truly welcome, they needed to be able to hold a mirror to our game and see faces like theirs looking back. That our game needs to reflect diversity. It needs to reflect the whole community and not just parts of it. And in the main, it does. That's one of its great strengths. It crosses socioeconomic backgrounds, it crosses racial and religious divides. It's a great leveller because it relates to and reflects the wonderful diversity of this country. But just as we've expanded our competition with new teams in some of Australia's fastest growing regions, like the Gold Coast and Greater Western Sydney, we also need to respond to Australia's changing demographics. At the same conference, demographer Bernard Salt told our industry conference the biggest intakes of migrants to Australia are now from India and China. In fact, the number of Greek and Italian immigrants is contracting as we welcome huge numbers from Asia, both north and south. Yet what are we doing to attract them to our game? How are we engaging with them, and how are we connecting with them? And it's a similar story in Greater Western Sydney, where next year we will establish our 18th AFL team, the GWS Giants. Sydney is not only the biggest market in Australia, it also has the highest number of people born overseas of any city in the country. For more than 1 million residents, English is their second language. And a large number of these people live in Western Sydney. It's a community representing so many cultural backgrounds, religions and races. In fact, over 200 languages are spoken. We want to help build the first AFL team in Greater Western Sydney because we believe the story of this community in many ways represents the AFL community. Its socio-economic mix is diverse, and above all, it's a community that is proud of its diversity. celebrates the diversity just as we celebrate and take pride in the mix of people who play, support and are involved in our game. Now, some people have criticised the idea and say the cultural diversity of Greater Western Sydney is why an AFL team can't work. I look at the diversity of Greater Western Sydney and see exactly why it can. There's no doubt these communities also present challenges for us, and that's why we've engaged people like Ali Faraj, a young Muslim man from Melbourne in Western Sydney who has taken up our game and wants more Muslims to play Australian football. Ali has helped start a Muslim-based club called the Auburn Tigers, which now also has a women's team. And asked at our industry conference about his dream, Ali said, and I quote, "I'd love to see my son become the #1 draft pick." It's one thing that Ali is helping us to take football into the Muslim community. Just as importantly, Ali is bringing his culture into the AFL, helping us understand the similarities and importantly the differences. And as much as football is making a difference in his community, he's making a far bigger difference in ours. It hasn't always been an easy journey for our game. At times it's been very painful. It started back in the 1990s with the development of our racial and religious vilification code after several well-documented incidents. Who can forget the picture of Nicky Winmar in 1993 lifting his jumper and proudly pointing at the colour of his skin? It's one of the most powerful images ever in our game, a moment in time that had such an enormous impact on our game and on this country. As did the actions of Michael Long in 1995, then a young player with Essendon. Michael was racially abused during an Anzac Day match. He had the courage to take a stand on behalf of himself and all Indigenous players. He refused to accept that on-field racist taunts were just part of the game. He refused to play along with the ridiculous belief that hurtful and racist comments lasted only as long as a game of football. His leadership and his courage forced the game of Australian football to wake up. And as a result, the AFL went and spoke to Indigenous players across the league and found that Long was not alone, that on-field racial abuse was widespread and that Indigenous players were hurting as a result. What followed was consultation with Indigenous, the multicultural community, and with experts including the Race Discrimination Commissioner and President of the Human Rights Commission. The result of those talks was the introduction of a first into Australian sport, a racial and religious vilification rule, which outlawed any such racial abuse and set in place a process to deal with it when it arose. No longer could Indigenous players or players from multicultural backgrounds be abused for the colour of their skin or their cultural background. It was never acceptable, but for the first time our rules added steel to the words. And as a result, I believe spectators are in the main more respectful of cultural diversity, which has become such a big feature of our game. It's no longer okay to racially abuse players. Neither is it funny. And not only has this made the game more accessible to more people, it's made it a more welcoming environment to Indigenous people. We've broadened the racial vilification rule a couple of years ago to include diversity and gender, the first of any type of policy in the world. The recent on and off-field incidents in our game show that we still have some way to go to change the attitudes of some people. That the fight to end racial vilification never really ends. But we've also come a long way. In 1990, when the AFL first came into being, there were just 17 Indigenous players. Today, they're in excess of 80, representing in excess of 10% of all of our AFL players. What cascaded out of that painful period has fundamentally changed the AFL as an organisation and forced us to back our words with actions. If we say we want to be open and welcoming and accessible to all people from all cultures and backgrounds, then our actions must reflect our words. So we engage with Indigenous Australia in a real and meaningful way. We now have programs such as Kickstart, which provides leadership and football training for young Indigenous kids, mixed with a strong health and education message. It's why we've partnered with Rio Tinto for a new program called Footy Means Business to create employment opportunities